rest of the 10 entities that their audits have been finalized had the non-compliance with the applicable laws and regulations. Okay, then next slide, I am comparing the irregular expenditure, fruitless and wasteful expenditure that has been identified within the portfolio. You can see the blue bar is indicating irregular expenditure for the current year, and then the brown bar there is indicating the fruitless and wasteful expenditure for the current year. So from this pictorial, you can see that the entities that had incurred both irregular expenditure and the fruitless and wasteful expenditure for the current year is the DMR and CGS. So the explanation of the irregular expenditure that has been identified in the current year. Okay, so the definition of that irregular expenditure, when we are talking to irregular expenditure, we are saying that is the expenditure that was incurred in the contravention of key legislation. However, goods and services may have been delivered. The issue was that the process that led to those delivery of goods and services, there were shortcomings in terms of the prescribed legislation that needed to be followed. So the irregular expenditure in the portfolio, if you're comparing it to the prior, there has been a decrease of 78% as compared to the prior. In the prior, the portfolio had 63 million of in the prior, the portfolio had 292 million irregular expenditure, and then in the current year, that irregular expenditure has decreased to 63 million. And then the biggest contributors of the 63 million is the 18.7 million that has been incurred by Mhsc, 16 million that was incurred by the SADPMR, and 115 million that was incurred by the DMRE. And then the irregular expenditure that was identified or incurred in the current year was due to the competitive process not followed, and all the prescripts that has been prescribed there in terms of the procurement, they were not followed. And then also contracts were extended or modified without obtaining the appropriate approvals. So when we move to the bar on the right-hand side, right at the bottom, when we are looking at the previous year's irregular expenditure that was reported that needed to have been investigated, we are saying that the DMR, the Mhsc, Mintech, and NEXA, and SDT, they failed to investigate that irregular expenditure of the prior. And then as compared to in the prior year, only the DMR had failed to investigate. And then if I move over to the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, so the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, what we mean by fruitless and wasteful expenditure is that there was an expenditure that was incurred in vain, and that expenditure could have been avoided if reasonable steps have been taken. So what it simply means is that there was no value for money for this money that was spent. And then when I'm comparing for the portfolio, as comparing to the prior, the fruitless and wasteful expenditure has decreased by 67% as compared to the prior, because in the last year we were sitting with 118 million of fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and in the current year we are sitting with 39 million of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Then the nature of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure that has been incurred for the portfolio, 20.7 million of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure was in relation to the DMRE, which was mainly the storage cost for the geyser units that are still not installed, that they are still paying for those storage fees. And then the 18.5 million of fruitless and wasteful expenditure was in relation to CGS, where they had inadequate contract management process in place. And then the rest was the contributor between SADPMR, Mintech, NEXA combined. So when I'm looking at the fruitless and wasteful expenditure that was disclosed and in the prior and incurred in the prior, where there was the expectation was that this fruitless and wasteful expenditure needs to have been investigated then the DMR still failed to investigate that fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Okay, so linked to the fruitless and wasteful expenditure and the irregular expenditure. So where I was talking to the red bars on at the bottom of the right-hand side, where there were challenges in terms of the investigations, either for the fruitless and wasteful expenditure or the irregular expenditure. So the entities that have failed to investigate the prior irregular expenditure or fruitless and wasteful expenditure and have the consequence management findings is the DMR, Mhsc, Mintech, NECSA, and SDT. So the main reason was that there was no investigation that was done in some instances, and where there were investigations that were done, the investigations were not performed by independent person rather than management who have committed the non-compliance, or there was no adequate disciplinary actions that was taken against the staff who caused the unauthorized or irregular or fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So what we are recommending is that in terms of these investigations, we are recommending that these investigations must be done in a timely manner to make sure that if ever there are any disciplinary actions that needs to be taken by the accounting officers or the accounting authorities against those transgressors, it can be done timeously. Okay, so we move over to the focus area that deals with the supply chain management. When we are looking at the overall picture comparing to the prior, there has been a regression in SCM compliance. We're comparing last year and this year, where we are saying that the DMR, the CGS, DMR and NIRADI in the current year did not have any supply chain management, they did not have any supply chain management findings, which is an improvement for the CGS. And then when we come to the entities that had material findings, however, those findings were not material to warrant to be included in the auditor's report. That is Mintech, NERSA, and NNR, and SDT. And then the ones that had material non-compliance that were elevated to the audit report, that was Mhsc, NECSA, SADPMR, and SANEDI. That is now in relation to the supply chain management non-compliance. So the most common findings that were identified in relation to supply chain management was that the procurement process that was not fair, equitable, and transparent and competitive was done by Mintech, NECSA, SADPMR, Mhsc, SANEDI, and SDT. And then there were also adjudication committee that was not properly formed in terms of the legislation. NECSA failed to make sure that their committee is in line with the required prescripts there. And then also that there were contracts that were amended or extended without the proper approval by the delegated officials. In terms of this, there are instances where if ever these contracts needs to be extended, National Treasury also needs to be informed. And then also there were awards that were made to suppliers that did not submit or declare in their interest. That non-compliance was identified by NERSA, and then also with regards to the COVID-19 regulations, Mhsc and NERSA failed to follow some of those regulations when they were doing their procurement processes. So the recommendations that we have for the entities is the training when it comes to the applicable legislations, so that the people that will be dealing with the SCM related matters they fully comprehend the new and updated legislations, and then also that all the SCM findings that we have identified or identified by management needs to be investigated. Okay, so that is all in terms of the audit outcomes. And then we move over to the amendment to the Public Audit Act, where that amendment brought about what we call the material irregularities. And then what we mean by the material irregularity and then we're saying that the irregularity is any non-compliance that can be identified or contravention of legislation, or it can also be fraud, it can also be theft, it can also be breach of any fiduciary duty. So that irregularity that would have been identified, it needs to it needs to either result, or if you assess it, it's likely to result in material financial loss, misuse or loss of material public resources, or there will be substantial harm to the public sector institution or to the general public. And then I want to emphasize that all of these irregularities that we're referring to, they need to be identified during the audit. And then when I started, I indicated the types of audit that we do as the AGSA. So it will be in line and linked to those audits that we do. And then these requirements of the material irregularity, the office has followed a phased-in approach ever since the Public Audit Act was amended. And then for this phase that we are reporting on 2020-2021, there was no entity that relates to the portfolio that was implementing the material irregularity or the amendments to the Public Act. So in terms of the following year, then there is a possibility of some of the entities within the portfolio that will now be implementing these amendments to the PAA. So what we look into when we do this selection, some of the things that we look into, we looked at the portion of the expenditure budget and the regular expenditures that these entities would have incurred or disclosed. So the selection is also focused on auditors that are key contributors to government priorities. So like I indicated that in terms of the 2021 financial year, there was no entity within the portfolio that was now facing in the amendment to the PAA. Okay, so from everything that I have said, what it means is that for this portfolio has obtained one clean audit, which is a regression as compared to the prior. In terms of the annual financial statements that were submitted and audited, we have 9 financial statements that are unqualified, and then we have 1 disclaimer of opinion. And then the findings on predetermined objectives, we had 3 entities that have material findings on predetermined objectives, and then findings with compliance with legislation. We do have entities that have material findings with the applicable legislation, and the overall irregular expenditure that has been incurred for the year, it's sitting at 63 million. Okay. So with the audit, we also evaluate what we call the governance and the internal controls within the entities. And then we have divided those internal controls that we were going to evaluate. With those internal controls, there are what we call the assurance levels, the different role players that are there within the entities that are supposed to provide assurance to provide assurance. And then from there, we had the first level of assurance providers, which is made out of the senior management, accounting authority, and the executive authority. And then we have the second level, which is the internal audit units, and then the audit committees. So in terms of the senior management being ranked as whether they're providing assurance or not, in all of the entities except for NEXA, we are saying that the senior management of the entities provided some assurance. They did not provide assurance. Reason for that is that there were still material misstatements that we identified, or there were non-compliance that we have identified there in relation to these entities. And then Nexus, the main reason for Nexus providing limited or no assurance is the disclaimer of opinion that has been obtained as compared to the prior year as well, the same audit outcome. And then the accounting authorities and the accounting officers, we are saying that in 3 of the entities, the accounting authorities or accounting officers has been assessed as providing assurance, that is CGS, NERSA, and NNR. And then in 5 of the entities, the DMR, Mhsc, SADPMR, ST, and SANEDI, we're saying that they provided some of the assurance. And then if you look at these entities, you'll find that there were consequence management findings that were identified that the accounting authorities or accounting officers needed to make sure that that is taken care of. And then NEXA still has been assessed as providing limited or no assurance there. Then the executive authorities has been assessed as providing assurance, and then NEXA is seeking intervention from the executive authority in relation to the audit outcomes thereof. And then on the internal audit unit side, the CGS, the DMR, NERSA, and NNR has been assessed as providing assurance. And then for MinTech, NEXA, SADPMR, SANEDI, and SDT, we feel that there is still some work that the internal audit can assist the accounting officer with in relation to the audit outcomes. And then the audit committee for CGS, DMR, NERSA, and NNR also has been assessed as providing assurance. So for MinTech, NEXA, SADPMR, SANEDI, and SDT as providing some assurance. And then the audit committee works through the assistance of the internal audit. So we are saying that audit committee, with the assistance of internal audit, there's still a work that they can implement there on those entities. Okay. And then in terms of the status of the internal controls, the status of internal controls that we have decided upon, we have broken it down in terms of the 3 spheres, where we are talking about leadership, we are talking about financial and performance management, and then we are talking about the governance. So in terms of leadership, we are talking about the effective leadership within these entities. And then it's good to say that when we look at the portfolio, all the entities, we are saying that they do have effective leadership, and then NEXA is the one that still needs to work on that leadership. And then in terms of the performance and financial management, with regards to proper record keeping, we're saying that the DMR, MinTech, NERSA, NNR, SADPMR, and SANEDI, they were able to make sure that their information is secured, and then when there is, when we need records, they were easily retrievable even throughout the pandemic. And then CGS and SDT, there were issues, even though eventually some of the informations were obtained, there were issues in making sure that that information is retrievable in a timely manner. And then NEXA, with the disclaimer of opinion that they've obtained, it means that they didn't have sufficient and appropriate audit evidence that they could provide to support some of the numbers that they have disclosed in their annual financial statements. And then when we come to the daily and monthly controls, we are saying that for the DMR, MinTech, SADPMR, SANEDI, and SDT, those were in place. And then CGS, NERSA, and NNR, they need to improve those ones, and the next intervention is required there. And then the review and the monitoring of the compliance with the applicable legislations, we are saying that for the CGS, DMR, MinTech, NERSA, NNR, SDT, and SDT, there were material non-compliance that were identified there that it's still a bit of a concern. And then for NEXA and SADPMR, the non-compliance were a lot that the intervention is required there. So on the governance structures for risk management, we are saying that NEXA is the one that is still of a concern, but when we look at the overall portfolio in terms of risk management, that has been taken care of. And then we come to the status of information technology on the IT environment, where the focus area was on the IT governance and then IT systems of controls. And then when we talked about IT governance, we are talking about that the IT is effective and it's efficiently used to enable the entities to achieve its mandate, and also that specifying decision rights and accountability framework to encourage desirable behavior of using the IT. So on the IT governance, we are saying that CGS, NERSA, NNR, and SANEDI had sound IT governance, and then there's some concern there when it comes to the DMR, MinTech, SADPMR, SDT, and NEXA. And then when we come to the IT control system, there is what we're referring to there is that the IT operates as intended to achieve its mandate. And then there's also effective then the IT operates as it's to achieve its mandate. And then for CGS, NNR, SADPMR, SANEDI, and SDT, the IT controls were there. And then there were concerns there in terms of MinTech, NERSA, and NEXA. And then there was intervention that is required for the DMRE. Okay. So the main reason why we look at the IT governance and the system controls, it's to make sure that this vulnerability to cyber attacks and business continuity concerns can be addressed so that these entities do not find themselves in those kind of situations. Okay. So with everything that I have said, we are saying that in summary, the main three root causes that we have identified in relation to this audit outcomes is that management did not put in place adequate controls to prevent the non-compliance with the procurement legislation. And then also they did not implement adequate reviews and monitoring controls over the preparation of the annual financial statements. And then the management was not effective in developing and monitoring and implementing all those action plans that they would have put in place to make sure that the audit outcomes improve. And then we've got recommendations. We've got recommendations for the entities within the mineral resources and energy portfolio, where we are recommending that the accounting officers and the accounting authorities, they need to make sure that they strengthen their preventative controls to make sure that the non-compliance, there is no non-compliance that takes place within the entities, not necessarily that they just identify it once it has occurred. And also that the accounting officers and the accounting authorities must review and make sure that these action plans are in place and they are addressing the root causes that would have been identified and communicated in those management reports. And then that also the accounting officers and the accounting authorities must continue to do their work through the audit committees assisted by the internal audit to ensure that management implement and enhances review processes for the annual financial statements. Then the consequence management must be monitored and also make sure that those investigations and then the transgressors ever found liable, they are held accountable. And then we've got recommendations for the portfolio committee, where we are recommending that the portfolio committee needs to follow up regularly with the executive authorities, the accounting officers and the accounting authorities on these action plans that they would have put in place to make sure that they're addressing the audit findings of the prior year, and then also the fruitless and wasteful expenditure and the irregular expenditure that has been incurred, that there is proper consequence management that takes place if with those investigations that needed to be done, and then if ever there are any transgressors that have been found to be liable, that consequence management has been effected. And then thank you very much. That is the message for today in relation to the portfolio of mineral resources and energy.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Lufuno. I hope I thought I was gonna give your acting boss an opportunity I think she requested to be released at 10 o'clock. Being the case as it may, please, honorable members, allow me to do things the way I used to so that we quickly finish. Accept my request, please. Let's not exceed 2 minutes, straight to the point. I can't see, is Honorable Mylem in the meeting?
Yes, Chairperson, I am.
Yeah, I don't want to do. Did Honorable Madogo come in? If he is not here, then I do the normal way I used to do. If you want me to pass, I'll pass. I will do this way. Within 3 minutes, please. Honorable Mashaule, then Honorable Mylem, then if Honorable Madogo is not present, we will take Honorable Langa. If Honorable Langa is not present, then that's okay. We will come back if they get an opportunity. Then it will be Honorable Malinga. Then it is Prof in the meeting. If Prof is not in and Honorable Zungula is not in, then it will be Honorable Volmarans. And then if Honorable Zungula is in, it will be Honorable Zungula. Then it will be Honorable Langa. If Honorable Langa is in or has not taken Honorable Madogo's place, then it will be Honorable Lorima. I forgot after Honorable Zungula, it will be Honorable Bilangulu. Sorry. Then it will be after Honorable Langa, it will be Honorable Lorima, then the last will be Honorable Kula. Let's try and stick to that. Honorable Mashaule, any comment?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to you. Greetings to the AG. Greetings to the department and greetings to my colleagues. Chair, just 3 things, if not 2. The first one is that it would appear that the AG is probably under the impression that as Parliament, we received any presentation from or any tabling from SEF and NEXA in the past financial year for SEF and then for NEXA 2016, 2017 and 2018 financial year. And in my knowledge, we have not received that. And here in Parliament, we were told, if I'm correct, by DMRE or the entities I referred to, that the AG was delaying the conclusion of the report. May we get clarity on what is going on, because we have not received such a tabling in the past financial year or so. That is the first point going to the AG. There is a slide, Chair, that speaks of DMRE receiving some adverse finding on the basis that they failed to charge interest to people who owe the state. I want to find out from the AG, is there a situation where, because another adverse finding was that they failed to pay suppliers within 30 days. Now, a balancing act would be needed here, and I would want to understand that, is there an instance where DMRE, where it did not pay for 30 days, companies have charged it interest, and has it paid that interest? The gist of why I'm asking this, it would appear that they have a lot of money that they don't need to charge people who owe state money that is due to the state. So I want to know whether they get charged or not, because an impression that they have money would be created if they are not charging for that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable Milam.
Sorry, Chairperson, I think I was next.
Yes, I'm saying.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chairperson, my concerns mirror that of Honorable Mahwale to a certain degree, particularly around the reporting of CEF and NECSA. And I'm very, very concerned about the AG's comments about the lack of assurances and quality control at NECSA. And if you have a look at the slides, you'll see that the one that is consistently in the red is NECSA. I would therefore ask for some unpacking of that as to exactly what the nature of the problem is and what is being done by the management of NECSA to address that problem. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Matope is present.
Chair, there would appear that there is a request from Honorable Langa to be the one.
Yes, I see that note. Honorable Langa. They seem to be talking about having network, both of them. Is Piaba Honorable Matope, isn't it?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay. Please, can they, because we're also manager, I think in those challenge, please, Honorable Langa, indicate, or Honorable Matope, when you are ready, we will try to find a way to give you that moment when you are ready. In the meantime, is Honorable Malinga in?
Good morning.
Honorable Malinga, you are the same. I see you are live though.
Yes, I am, Chair. Greetings to yourself, our committee staff. Chairperson, let me quickly welcome the presentation given by the Office of the AG, and really want to start. I thought, Chairperson, they will start by apologizing to the Portfolio Committee by not giving us audit outcomes of the entities. I remember last year the Chairperson had also to write a letter to the Auditor-General for not finishing their work on time. I thought they would have started there, Chairperson. Maybe it's me who is lost, Chair. Chairperson, I also find it strange that the ministry that oversees, which is DMRE, that oversees the entities, is also having irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. How will they monitor the entities that they don't have such? DMRE also, from the presentation, they lack in consequence management. How will they ensure that the entities ensure that where there is wrongdoing, consequence management takes place? Lastly, Chairperson, the assurance level, as mentioned by Honorable Mela, with NEXA Chair, is at senior management. Correct me if I'm wrong. At senior management, is it your CEOs or the board that needs to take or needs to ensure that there's assurance level in the entities? NEXA is really a worrying factor, Chair, given the fact that I think the presenter, Lufuno, when she started with her presentation, mentioned the three entities that yourself, you mentioned requested extension. AGSA being on the red is also on the request made by the minister. If we could just be clarified on that one, Chairperson, that what is exactly happening at NEXA? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Okay, Honorable Malinga, Honorable Matok, and Honorable Langa still not in. Okay, let me. Is Prof in the meeting?
Madokwe is in now, Chair.
That's why I allowed them to they can. That's why I said if they come in, they must just indicate by word of mouth.
She only came in now, Chair.
Honorable Matoke.
Yes, Chair, I keep getting disconnected. So I'm not sure where the meeting is.
No, we're dealing with the AG's report for now. Or you still want to go through your notes?
No, it's fine, Chair. I actually had three questions that I wanted to pose on the AG's report. It's just that I keep getting disconnected because of load shedding inside. Hopefully, okay. No, that's fine. So the first questions, I actually have three questions. The first one, being how the AG report, especially when it speaks on the lack of consequence controls, it's more or less the same thing where we're told that, look, these things are happening because we do not have any consequence control measures. And I mean, this is a repeat once more of not only this report, but various reports we've been given that account for why things are not done. So I'm trying to find out, who is responsible for this consequence management? And if they're not putting it into practice, then why do we not just remove those people and actually get people that are going to work and do the work that is needed? Because we can't always blame incompetence on lack of consequence control. And then I think on the issue of fruitless and wasteful expenditure as well, it is commendable that we've actually done some progress from 260 plus million to 63, but even that 63 million is actually still a lot of money. And there needs to be some way or some measures that whenever people sidestep processes and do as they wish, then they should themselves be held personally liable for whatever money is wasted by the department entities. Otherwise, we're going to keep on coming here and speaking about wasteful expenditure as if that money just disappears or that money is just misused in any way. But actually, there are people that are actually misusing, or not necessarily misusing, but that are not using the money in the correct way. So therefore, there needs to be some personal responsibility taken by those people, which therefore means that there must be policies in place to make sure that that happens. And then I think on the issue, the last one is on the issue of IT control and governance, because I know that a lot of entities, not just the department, but a lot of entities are actually going online to a point that even our people, with all the challenges that we know they have when it comes to accessing online, we still expect them to use online processes and platforms. But even though that is the case, department entities, including the department, which have all the resources at hand, they're still not getting it. And therefore, I'm just trying to understand what is being put in place to make sure that the shortfalls that have been identified will be attended to. And then also, the report of the AG also says that when it comes to the DMRE's IT controls, there is intervention that is needed. So I just wanted her to perhaps elaborate on what that exactly means, what kind of intervention is being referred to. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, is Prof still not in? Okay, Honorable Volmarans is he in? I guess he's not in.
I've just joined in, Chair. Thank you.
So I must pass. Okay, I see your mic is off. It means I must pass. Honorable Zungula is in. Okay, Honorable Bilangolo. Honorable Langa is still not in. Honorable Lorima.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Honorable Madogwe has brought up an issue that I'm also concerned about, and that concerns IT at the DMRE, slide 28. I too would like to know what details of the IT problem that was identified are, but I'd also like to ask another part of the question, and that is, I'm assuming that this was conveyed to management of DMRE. I'd like to know when, what date would the DMRE management actually have seen this recommendation? Thank you.
Okay, Honorable Pula. Honorable Kula.
No, Chair, you can pass. I'm covered by Honorable Matok.
Okay, before the AG can let me say thank you, AG, with the report. Obviously, I'm not saying you were making your closing remarks. Thank you for the presentation, but let me say also to members of the committee and your report, I understand your report is going to help and assist to guide us as we continue to interrogate the performance, especially at a financial level of the department. Just two quick things, three in fact, very quickly. I think we will be doing a disservice as this committee if we don't express our disappointment first on the performance of the AG yourselves. You are an auditing, like you said, your founding mandate. You are an authority as far as auditing is concerned, and amongst other things is performance and turnaround time. And if you were to have a situation where, and if you recall, by the way, last year, in the last session of the BRRR, the issues we raised of concern was the fact that the AG was hiding behind the issue of the COVID-19 challenges. And again, in this financial year, it's coming back with a similar thing, which in your own report on what should be the mandate of the committee, you are disadvantaging the committee by the fact that it cannot perform that particular mandate that you expect it to be done. I don't know when was the last time, I don't remember sitting looking at the performance of Mhsc, for an example, and see whether are they on a good course. But in your presentation, which makes it very difficult for this committee to express an opinion in your presentation, because the tabling has not been made. If it is made, it has been made very late to Parliament, and therefore disadvantages the committee to make an opinion on that. If AG had reported very early, most definitely would have dealt with the issue. The second thing is that I'm not sure where authority lies if the AG says we could not finalize something before, simply because one entity, and I raised this thing even last time, which of these entities do you wait for and which of those that you can't wait for? Because in my view, you audit people at all material times. They know when audit is going to take place. And failure to meet the deadline, it means you continue as though there is nothing that you have received. Now, I don't think we'll be doing a disservice to pretend as if it is not only making the work of the committee more difficult, but it's also making the credibility of what the AG is giving to be much more now a suspect, or whether even entities are treated the same. And now we are sitting, we are quite disadvantaged. That to me becomes the biggest challenge. NACSA and in fact even SAF is for the second, if not the third. The last time I checked, it was in 2019 when we dealt with in the BRRRs for SAF, and we are sitting and we still receive the same thing. Now, one would have argued and say, if in the last BRRRs they were behind, surely they should have been the high priority of the AG of AGSA, and I think for me, we must talk to AG. Leave the fact that we have sent correspondences, there were no responses on the progress that has been made. We now have to sit as a committee and say, what do we do with the 3 outstanding entities? And can we say now the department, by its performance, it has performed to the maximum when 3 entities are outside the determination of this committee? So my request is that please try that you don't have a recurrence of non-accountability of entities simply because things were going to point to the AG. I think the last thing we must say, whilst in appreciation, is the point that we have raised. For me, I would have loved if you can assist, not just to monitor consequent issues of consequent management, but also to be able to assist as to, at an effective level, what is it that the AG, in the event of failure to comply with the findings and the recommendations of the AG, what is it that the AG would want to see? For an example, I know you talked about cases where there's supposed to be disciplinary measures and so forth and so forth. What happens in the event that has not happened? Because from where we sit, we can make as much recommendations as we like, but we can't enter a department and say, you should have disciplined this. We can only make the minister and his team account on whether they have complied with 1, 2, and 3. But is there something that the AG, understanding the powers given to the AG, that when its recommendations have been undermined, they have made a decisive move to ensure that those who are responsible for compliance with those recommendations, they do so? If you can help us, just to give us a sense, because what would continue to frustrate even a committee of parliament is when it is able to identify, concede, and make and agree with the AG, and only to find out that what the AG has recommended is what it seems to be pursued by the committee with its limited powers. I think I just want to leave it at that point now. Unfortunately, as I say, some of the things are going to be difficult to handle with them as the committee, but I'm sure as a committee, we will find a way on how to navigate that. Let me give it to you then, AG.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members. I will be assisted by my colleagues in responding to the question. I will also like to maybe start by the apology that we did not extend when we started with our presentation. Yes, indeed, in the prior year when we came and after all the deliberations, we had made a commitment to say that for the entities that were still outstanding, once those entities are finalized, we will come back to the committee and provide the audit outcomes for those entities. And us as the AG, we failed to do that. We didn't do that we didn't come back and provide those audit outcomes. And then I truly apologize for that. And the committee, yes, indeed, tried to reach out to us in terms of trying to, for us to come back and give those outcomes. So in future, even for the ones that are not yet done now, the SEF group are honestly making a commitment to say that we will make arrangements to come and bring those audit outcomes. So when it comes to tabling of the annual reports, the tabling is the responsibility of the minister to table once we have given them the audit reports. I understand that at times, that tabling might have happened outside the normal prescribed legislated timelines. But once the audit report has been provided, then the entities through the executive authority, there's expectation that they will table those annual reports, including the audit outcomes. So hence the inclusion of SADPMR in our presentation and NEXA in our presentation, that we have completed those audits. We might not necessarily have completed them at legislated timelines, but we managed to complete those ones, and then those audit outcomes for those entities we are providing. For the SEF group, unfortunately, at this point in time, the SEF group is not yet finalized. We are still busy with that audit. And the question that the chair asked as to which entities do we wait for, which entities do we allow, and all of that. So for us to be able to provide the audit opinion, we need to have had sufficient time or sufficient audit evidence for us to be able to do that. And then at times, like in the past 2 years, I would say that has taken a bit of a time where for us to come to those conclusions. And then when we are dealing with a group structure, the issue with that is that the entities that are underneath the group, they need to be consolidated to the holding company, and then the overall picture for the holding company needs to be presented. So when we are talking to the SEF group, there are entities within the SEF group that their audit outcomes and their audits have been finalized. However, there are some entities that have not been finalized. Hence, the SEF group, we were not able to come and present to you today. So I think one of my colleagues will come and also assist with that. They'll come later on before I close to talk to the SEF group. So if I can just try to go back to the first question that was asked by Honorable Matlaule. I think I dealt with the tabling of the SEF and the NEXA there. Then there was the question that related to the interest being charged to the state. Okay, so in terms of the legislation, if ever what is owed to the state has been long outstanding, there are interest rates that have been determined by the Minister of Finance that the departments needs to use in terms of charging for those interests. Yes, there were instances that we have identified that not all outstanding debt that was owed to the department, there was interest charged. There were interest charged for some of the debts that was owed, and they're not charged for some. So I think that the issue came now with the merger between the two entities in trying to making sure that there's uniformity in how the things are applied there. So it's something that the department is working on to make sure that that doesn't reoccur. So when we come to the payment of suppliers within 30 days, from the test that we have done and the audit that we have done, we did not identify any fruitless and wasteful expenditure that might have come from interest that was charged by the suppliers. So even if you look at the disclosure there on the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, even the entity itself did not identify interest that was charged by the supplier for not paying within the 30 days. Okay, so that was the questions that were asked by Honorable Mahlaule. And then if I move over to the question that was asked by Honorable, is it Mileham? There was the question on the reporting of SEF and NEXA. Yes, we did not necessarily report on SEF or NEXA in the prior year. However, we are bringing in the audit outcomes for NEXA today. And then I think the question that Honorable Member had asked there, it's more directed to the entity itself, asking how is NEXA addressing the issue of the recurring disclaimers that we have now presented today. Because today we actually gave the audit outcomes of the prior and also the audit outcomes of the current year, where we are showing you that in the prior it was a disclaimer of audit opinion, and then again in the current year we are sitting with a disclaimer of audit opinion, hence the reds that we have there on the assurance providers. And then I think Honorable Langa did not ask a question. Then we move to Honorable Malinga, who wanted us to start by the apology. Yes, I agree with that we should have started with that one. And then there was the question on how DMR or DMRE, if ever they are sitting with the fruitless and wasteful expenditure and irregular expenditure, and also consequence management in their audit outcomes, how will they provide assurance to the other entities if ever they are sitting with this problem? I think that is more directed to the department rather than the auditors there. And then there was the question on the assurance providers to say, when we are talking to the senior managers, who are we referring to? Senior managers in terms of our determination of these assurance providers, we are referring to the CEOs, we are referring to the EXCO members, the executive members of management. And then when we refer to the accounting officers or accounting authorities, the accounting officer will be the DG, and then accounting authorities will be the board members thereof. So in some instances in these entities, we have now said that the senior management and also the accounting officer and accounting authorities did not necessarily provide assurance when it came to the issues that was identified throughout the audit. Then the tabling question, I think I've responded to that one to say that once the audit is done, the expectation is that the minister needs to table. And then there was Honorable Madokwe's question on the lack of consequence management, who's responsible for implementing consequence management. So when we come to the legislation is very clear to say that the accounting officer or the accounting authorities, depending on the type of entity we are dealing with, it's responsible for making sure that if ever there was any fruitless or wasteful expenditure or irregular expenditure that has been identified, they need to investigate those instances, and also that if ever there are transgressors that have been identified, they need to take the disciplinary actions thereof. So that their responsibility or the accountability in relation to consequence management lies with the accounting officers or the accounting authorities. Then there was a comment on the reduction of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And then there was a question on IT control that went together with the question for, I think it's Honorable Lorima. Okay. The issue there with the DMR in terms of IT is that the members will remember that there is the DMR and the DOE merged, and they've been operating as one entity for the first time in this financial year. So when it comes to the merger, the expectation is that the systems of DMR or the systems of DOE no longer exist, and then they are now seen as one entity. So when we come to the IT infrastructure, so the IT auditors, what they've identified is that there were instances where it was still seen as there's two departments. There's still the DOE and then the DMR. That merger or that integration did not necessarily take place when it comes to the infrastructure. That was still underway. So that now that brought some deficiencies, which came as a result of the duplication of issues, and then the security vulnerabilities. They will not necessarily be mitigated timeously, because now you are dealing with more than one system, and then also that the patch management process in place and all these follow-ups were going to take time for the department to be able to address. So that is the biggest contributor there. So what we are recommending there is that in terms of the IT infrastructure, because now there is only one department, that needs to be fast-tracked so that the monitoring thereof can be done effectively and efficiently. This was communicated. There was I think Honorable Lorima asked, when was this recommendation provided to the department? When we finalized the audits around July, August, these identified internal controls or identified findings were discussed with the departments, and the department and the recommendation thereof was provided to the department then. So they are aware. Then okay, I think apart from the details of SEF and the details of NEXA, I have responded to the full questions there. Between Mr. Mavundla and Ms. Janelle, they can assist me there with the questions relating to the specifics relating to NEXA and SEF. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members. My name is Mhsc, Engagement Manager responsible for the SEF audit. So there's 3 reasons for the delay of the SEF group audit. The first reason is that instead of 31st of May 2021, Petro SA submitted their annual financial statements on the 31st July. So we need Petro SA to be consolidated into the SEF group audit so that SEF group can submit to us the final annual financial statements. And then the second reason was that the main subsidiary of Petro SA, there was a delay of information to be received from them. And then the last reason of the delay is that the going concern assessment on the Petro SA financial statements, there's a bit of an uncertainty or is not appropriate, and that assessment is pending. My colleague Ignatius Fori can provide more details if needed for that. So for that reason, we don't have the final group financial statements for the SEF group to allow us to audit the SEF group. Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle. I don't know, Mhsc, if you have anything else to add in relation to NEXA group.
Knock, knock. Are you done?
Honorable Chair, I see Mr. Mavunda's mic doesn't look like it's muted, but I can't hear what he's saying if he's speaking.
Must increase the volume.
Okay, we don't seem to have him on. He seems not to be audible. I think we are done, Chair.
We don't want now to understand the problem of the IT with the AG in the same way it is with the department. Okay, AG. Before I release you, let me check whether is there any honorable member for 1 minute who would want to, if it was in a criminal procedure or any procedure, want to do a re-examination. I see the hand of Honorable Mahlaule. Is there any other member in 1 minute? Is it only you, Honorable Mahlaule? Okay.
It would appear.
Okay.
Chair, just a comment, and I just feel itchy if I don't make a follow-up on this. I think the responses by the presenter sufficed. The one that is added by Ms. Mashian takes us back because, yes, the submission was made by the 30th September 2021 by, I think it's SEF. But that's not our question. Our question was that the last financial year, we did not get a tabling, and we understand the issue of tabling, who tables and who creates an audit outcome that must be tabled. But we were told that you have delayed the completion of the audit, and that's where we are. Not anything else. That's where we are, and I think the apology sufficed at that time. Not this edition that, from my side, I feel that we're being taken back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mahlaule. Now, thank you, AG, for your responses. I won't go back, except to say in this committee, just for you to, and I hate because sometimes people may think, hey, that committee was threatened. At least I can say there is one commitment that we have, regardless of our political backgrounds. When we do the work, we want to do a thorough work. If it needs be, please prioritize us. 2, please prioritize some of the entities that are behind. Thirdly, please work on exactly on what you say. Although with the last answer, especially with SEF, it makes me to be uneasy, but let's leave it for now. My understanding is that an auditing authority cannot wait for somebody, regardless, in order to make an opinion. My fear is that it might happen that up until the end of this year, and whether that won't have implications for the following year. So please, my request is that please, we are willing to cooperate and to work with you, but also please make us fail because of our own, not because we can say this cannot happen because of 1, 2, and 3. Thirdly, if you want to remain and note, we will read the letter from the minister to the speaker. Like Honorable Mahlaule, I don't want us to go back to that and hear what that letter says. But the truth of the matter is that And we will explain again when we start with the department. The truth of the matter is that we cannot act outside the procedures of Parliament. We can only deal with a matter that is tabled. And when that matter is tabled, there is a certain process that must be followed. Anything that is not reflecting on the activities of Parliament Portfolio Committee, regrettably, it cannot be a subject of discussion in that committee. But as members say, we will have to come back on the 3 outstanding entities on how are we going to tackle them, but most definitely on the 2. I can safely say, sitting here, I'm not an auditor. I can't express an opinion. I don't have final authority. But I can safely say that SEF, by its very nature, has disqualified itself by the fact that it has not met your timeline or your deadline. But we will wait. I still feel that you should be careful to be perceived that there are entities that can go according to their pace, and you will be patient with them in doing so. But thank you very much with your presentations. Ari, can you guide us, and Ayanda, having finalized the matter with the AG?
Do you want me to flight the letter, Chair?
Are we going straight to the department?
Oh, okay.
Or do we need to take a break? I'm asking. No? Okay, can you flight the letter first so that before we, sorry, honorable members. Yeah, can we flight the letter and read it to us? Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
The letter, yes.
My dog is barking here in the background, Chair.
Don't worry, it means you are safe. You've got a protection.
All right, Chair. So the letter was sent by the Minister to the Speaker of Parliament. This type of letters is sent both to the Speaker and the Chairperson of the NCOP, Chair. Request for extension in tabling the South African Diamond and Precious Metals Regulator.
Let me help you, because I can see this dog does not like this committee.
Yes, Chair.
Let's just switch off. Look, Ayanda, can you do it?
Okay, Chair. Can you just flight it, Ari?
Yes, it's on the screen.
All right. Request for extension in tabling the South African Diamond and Precious Metals Regulator, SADPMR, Central Energy Fund, CF, Nexa Group, and CF SOC Ltd annual reports for the 2020/2021 financial year. Section 51D of the Public Finance Management Act of 1999, Act number 1 of 1999, requires that a public entity must submit within 5 months after the end of the financial year to relevant Treasury and executive authority responsible for the entity an annual report on activities of that entity during the financial year. Section 65(1) of the PFMA also requires that the executive authority responsible for a department or public entity table in the National Assembly the annual report and annual financial statement within 1 month of the accounting officer or accounting authority for a public entity receiving the audit report. Considering the above mentioned context, the South African Diamond and Precious Metals Regulator, Nexa Group, are unable to table their 2020/2021 annual reports due to reasons exposed below. 1. SADPMR. With regard to SADPMR, the Auditor-General South Africa has encountered delays in the finalization of 2020/2021 audits, Additional time is required by the Auditor-General to finalize its quality assurance processes before the audit can be signed. AGSA endeavors to finalize SA-DPMR audit reports by 15 August 2021. However, there have been further delays encountered by the AGSA. The SA-DPMR will table the annual report as soon as the audit process is finalized. 2. Nexa Group. Nexa Group cited AGSA's state of readiness to commence with the audit soon after the 2019-2020 annual financial statement was submitted on 31st May 2021. Furthermore, AGSA wrote to the chairperson of Nexa board citing the tremendous impact of COVID-19 second wave and a number of other matters which resulted in delays in the completion of 2020-2021 audit. The annual report will be tabled as soon as the audit process is finalized. Number 3, SEF Ltd. SEF Ltd failed to submit the annual report, resulting in non-compliance with the PFMA timelines. The non-compliance is regrettable. Petro SA required extension to submit annual financial statements due to delays in the finalization of Ghana Reserve Audit, which impacted the consolidation of annual financial statement at SEF Group level. Consequently, the group AFFs have not been audited yet. And then it says, in the event that they require any further information or clarification, don't hesitate to contact the PLO, Mr. Michael Ngalo, and then it was signed by the minister on the 30th of September 2021. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and I just wanted honorable members to, because we have to table the letter for the benefit of the committee to understand. I'm sure now it clarifies everything that the fact that these entities were not here is that they did not meet the deadline. And that is the reason that the committee cannot entertain them. But as I said, we will have to deal with the matter as we deal with the report. I can allow honorable members, when we deal with the report, and see what is it that we think has to be done. In the meantime, the committee secretaries will have to look at what are the options available post the BRRR process. Now, I wanted to check, according to the program, we are supposed to go on a break. What time are we supposed to reconvene? Ari and Ayan?
At 11, Chair, we can go on break now for 10 minutes and start at 11.
Then we take a break of 10 minutes and then come back. DM, are you still present in the meeting?
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Let me give to the Deputy Minister and the as well as the personnel of the department led by the DG. We will see in their presentation how far. Unfortunately, DMS, we don't have enough time. What is the time allocation? Are I going to the other program?
It's about 45 minutes here.
Yes.
For the department, yeah.
DM, the floor is yours. 1:45, bring the ropes back to me. Thank you very much, DM.
No, thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson, Mr. Luzipo, the honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, guests, media, the staff from the Ministry and the staff from the Portfolio Committee, the head of department, Mr. Mokoena, and the heads of the entities of the DMRE family. Good day. Firstly, Honorable Chairperson, I wish to tender an apology on behalf of our Minister Gwede Mantashe. He has attended Africa Energy Week, which is currently taking place in Waterfront here in Cape Town today. Chair, it is with great honor for us to be part of this significant portfolio committee to actually be here to witness and note all the audit findings, outcomes, as well as recommendations by the Office of the Auditor-General as far as the performance of the department is concerned. We wish to indicate to the portfolio committee that some of the findings by the Auditor-General have been addressed and some are still work in progress and shall be addressed in the current financial year. We further wish to reaffirm our position that there will be regular monitoring of action plans by the Minister and the Accounting Authority in relation to the implementation of the findings and recommendations that the Auditor-General has raised, and there will be consequence management against staff that transgressed any compliance with the legislation. Honorable Chairperson, today we have been requested by the Portfolio Committee to present before the PC the annual performance reports for the 2020-2021 financial year. Chair, there will be a presentation that is going to be led by the department, which is the DG, as well as the presentations from different entities, and those presentations encapsulate performance highlights and strategies to overcome underperformance. Through you, Honorable Chairperson, allow me to call upon the DG to take us through the presentations and assign relevant DDGs and COs where necessary. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Over to you, DG.
Thank you very much, DM. Greetings to the Honorable Chair, yourself, DM, and also all honorable members of the PPC, the chairpersons of the entities under DMRE, and the CEOs, DDGs, chief directors, and directors that are in attendance, our support staff to Parliament and also Ministry, and the media in attendance, and public members that are also in attendance. Thank you very much, DM. I'll be very brief, DM and the Chair. We have three parts that we are going to present to the PPC this morning. We will start with the first part, which is performance highlights and also summary. And that will be done by the head of strategy, Mr. Mulauzi. Part B would also be on program performance information. It would also be done by the head of strategy, Chief Director Mulauzi. Lastly, we'll then deal with the financial information, which would be done by the CFO. Now, under performance highlights, we'll just give honorable members the highlights on issues that occurred during the year under review, and also a summary of the program performance for the year under review. Then under performance information, it will be the reasons for deviation relating to the targets that have not been achieved. Then the CFO and the financial information will deal with the budget program structure for 2020-21 financial year, final appropriation, as well as actual spending and variance, and summary of audit outcomes. Now, with the understanding, Chair, that we first start with the presentation of the department, which will be followed by the Mine Health and Safety Council. Then after that, the Chair would hand over to you, and we'll start with another session of all the entities under the stable of DMRE. We are aware of the time limitations, and we had a brief chat with the colleagues to be mindful of that fact that they need to be very, economic in terms of time. The other issue, Chair, that we just want to highlight, my apologies on this one. I think, we should have done it when DM started. I know it will come up. It just came now. As I know, every time when we appear here, there will be an issue around the new people that we are having, especially from our entities. Now, when we deal with that, Chair, with your indulgence, I would really appreciate if then the DM can be afforded with an opportunity just to take the members through before we start with the entities where we have new people that have been appointed. Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Mlauzi? You only have less than 25 minutes. We are going to stop you if you go beyond the time that has been allocated to your good self, so that we can allow the Mine Health and Safety Council to come in immediately after you. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair of the Portfolio Committee, members, Deputy Minister, DG, protocol observed. I will zoom straight to slide number 6. Go back, go a little bit back. Again, that one, yes, stop there. With regard to this one here, we are giving the Portfolio Committee the work that has been done in terms of policy and legislation. We have the draft Upstream Petroleum Resource Development Bill. In this regard, we're going to request Cabinet's approval for the introduction of the bill in Parliament. And once that has been done, the Minister will then table the bill in Parliament. Relating to the Gas Amendment Bill, the bill was approved by Cabinet. It will be introduced in Parliament this year, and then thereafter there will be some parliamentary consultation to ensure that it is widely endorsed by the other stakeholders. We have the Clean Fuels 2 regulations, which is planned to be gazetted for public comments. That equally applies to the mandatory biofuels blending regulation, which will also be gazetted for public comments in this financial year. There is the liquid petroleum gas rollout strategy. We will gazette this strategy rollout for the liquid petroleum gas, and then there will be this one also will follow the review in terms of changes which would have been identified. With regard to the development of the artisanal and small-scale mining policy, as of April this year, the department allocated 38 million towards the rehabilitation cost, as well as exploration and capitalization of small-scale mining policy. Next slide. These are the continuation of the performance highlights. We committed to 100% payment of invoices within 30 days, but we did 99%. As we go down, you'll see the reason there was that obviously we need to ensure as a collective that when we receive these things, we push them forward so that we pay. They must not stay on our desk. And that we did 4,721 jobs, which were created through the issuing of mining rights. 9 black industrialists were created through procurement. 644 petroleum site inspections conducted. 965 fuel samples were tested. 401 mining economics inspections were done. 968 environmental inspections were finalized. 95.2 of petroleum license inspections approved had a 50% historically disadvantaged SA ownership. We also had 5 carbon offset projects which were processed and approved. A report on the energy-related climate change, which is very important, was produced. We also produced 14 publication reports in relation to that. A Chrome beneficiation strategy was approved by Cabinet together with the beneficiation master plan. A draft artisanal small-scale mining policy has been developed. We also managed to have a draft regulations on the long-term operation of nuclear installations, which was gazetted. The National Energy Regulator Amendment Bill is currently with the State Law Advisor, and it will soon find its way to Cabinet. Move a little bit. Moved, okay. The 2015 National Energy, okay. There was a 19% reduction in occupational injuries and 32% reduction in occupational diseases. This includes TB. A total of 8,008 inspections, which includes audits, was done, and that preferred bidders have been appointed for 1,195 megawatts with the signing of power purchase agreements. 1.58 terawatt per hour savings were realized against a target of 0.5. 14 new additional municipalities were included in the energy efficiency demand side management project. The National Energy Efficiency Strategy has been finalized and in process of being submitted to Cabinet. One wind atlas report was developed, whereas 166,888 additional households were electrified with grid. And then there is a roadmap for the implementation of the 2,500 megawatts nuclear program. 70 authorizations of applications from the nuclear side were also processed within the 8-week timeline. Now here, Chair and honorable members, we give you a dashboard, a snapshot of the summarized performance per program against the total number of targets that were stated in the 2020 APP. As you can see at the bottom, we had 70 targets. These targets were executed by these 6 programs. And you can see in administration, we had 12 targets, achieved 11, which is 92%, partial 1. Minerals and petroleum regulations, 14 targets, achieved 4, 29%, partial 8, could not achieve 2. Mining, minerals, and energy policy, we had 21, achieved 14, 67%, partial 5, could not achieve 2. Mine health and safety, 6, achieved 4, 67%, partial 1, did not achieve 1. Programs and projects, 11, achieved 5, 45%, could not achieve 6. Nuclear energy, 6, achieved 5, 83%, partial 1. Then the total date 70. Out of 70, our combined performance is for the 3 targets, which is 61%, partial 16, which is 23, and then could not achieve 11, which is 16%. Now, this graphic presentation is the same as the previous. I will skip it. Now, in terms of the not achieved targets, the major contributory factors at the time was the impact of COVID-19. However, due to the fact that this performance information is being monitored and evaluated on a quarterly basis by way of being presented at the management structures, such as EXCO, MANCO, and an audit committee, but also at the branch level. So the intervention or the catch-up plans in relation to those targets which have overflowed into this year's APP has been put in place by management, and then the effective implementation thereof is being monitored on a quarterly basis to determine the manner in which improvement in terms of performance is being realized. Next slide. This one talks to the service delivery environment, and in the main, is just to say we were hard at work in terms of ensuring compliance with the lockdown protocols, but also we were also ensuring that we put major safety networks within the work to ensure that our workers as well as any other stakeholders is safe, and taking into account the impact of the COVID-19 within our internal as well as external environment, including our mining environments. Next slide. This one talks about where we come from. We are now DMRE. Through the NMOC process, we have merged. We are now one department. We have a startup structure. That structure will go a restructuring, and the restructuring obviously has already commenced, and that people have been merged. They've got their appointment letters. They've been placed in the relevant programs, but we're also dealing, and we're also dealing with the issues of making sure that the vacant positions are filled so that we are able to execute the plan. Next slide. This is governance. We deal with risk issues as well. We've got the risk system within the department. We do assess the risk, and then we understand the risk exposures against our plan, and then we've put mitigation measures to manage them. We communicate about them in the various structures, RMC, Audit Committee, MANCO, and EXCO, as well as at branch level, to ensure that they don't catch us by surprise, to minimize execution. We also have fraud policies, fraud prevention plans, and we report about any incidents of fraud or any cases of fraud received. We will then look into it, investigate, as well as resolve the matters. But more than all, we also conduct awareness during the induction as well as the orientation program to make people aware about what constitutes frauds. We do manage the conflict of interest, especially SMS, as well as middle managers. Every year, we are required to complete those financial disclosure forms. We monitor the extent in which there is compliance. When there is no compliance, those specific individuals are given an opportunity to explain why they did not comply. If there is unsatisfactory responses, consequence management takes place. The code of conduct, it's still one of the framework that enhances improvement in terms of the control environment within the organization, and we have placed this in the website as well. On health-related issues, we comply with the COVID-19 protocol. The portfolio committee oversight, there were 36 of them in the previous year, but as far as internal controls, which was spoken in detail this morning, is that we develop a response action plan, and we monitor the implementation. It is tested by audit committee, presented at EXCO MANCO, And then we discourage employees who do not want to respond in time, and we encourage everybody to comply with all the internal control related issues. Next slide. Here, chairperson and members is to say, like AG would have indicated, is the DMRE surrounded by its 11 entities. As you know, we only able to table 8 out of the 11. And then the 3 that could not table, they have been spoken about this morning. Obviously, the first one will be SEF. AG is still conducting the audit there. The second one is NEXA. But I must say that NEXA has finalized, AG has finalized audit for NEXA last week. The documentation as well, the tabling letter is with the relevant authority for approval and will be submitted to or tabled in Parliament soon. The South African diamond and precious metal, there is also the documents have been received, are with the relevant authority, they will be tabled. And then there are reasons, obviously, that were read in terms of the non-finalization of the audit for these 3. And then the slide that follows, it will give you the snapshot of the audit outcomes in terms of the various entities. Next slide. No, go to the one that speaks about the audit outcomes. Yes. NERSA, go back. Next slide. Yes. The next one again. Yes. Yeah. Mine Health and Safety Council, unqualified, with matters of emphasis as alluded to by AG this morning. Mintech, also unqualified. Next slide. We've got NERSA, which is unqualified, and then NNR, which has got a clean audit together with NRWADI. Next slide. SANEDI, unqualified with emphasis. Now, this is the detailed performance program. Here, Chairperson, I will be focusing on the not achieved. I will take it that the partially achieved target is also not achieved because it's not 100% executed. On this one, there is no not achieved. Next slide. Yeah, there was a target to say we need to pay 100% of invoices received within 30 days. There we plan to do 100%, but we did 91. The 1% is as a result of codependency on other colleagues or programs to make sure that they fast track the submission of invoices. There is a system that the relevant people should be alerted to fast track the submission as well as the sending off of those invoices to the relevant units within finance for payment. So it's something that we need to work very hard on it and also communicate consistently, continuously, and make sure that we win this weakness, we improve on this weakness. The next slide. There is no not achieved here. Next slide. Program 2. On program 2, here there is partially achieved on the number of SLP development projects. There you can see, Chair, we plan to do 120, but then out of the 100, we underachieved by 50. This was as a result of the COVID lockdown. And then we also have a target that speaks about number of Black industrialists created. Our target was 10 for the year, and we did 9, Chair and honorable members. We were also affected. Reason was the lockdown. But as I've indicated earlier, there would be an improvement currently given the fact at which level we are now. Next slide. There was a target to say we will participate in the district development forums, but at the time of execution, we could not do that because we had to attend physical meetings, which was a little bit difficult at the time because of the lockdown. Hopefully, because this target is still there in the current APP, there will be improvement there. There is a target of study on the new oil refinery, which has repeatedly been indicated even during the quotas, has not been achieved. This is based on the fact that there is a decision that is being awaited to indicate as to whether the investor is still having an appetite to proceed in investing with the oil refinery. Next slide. There is a partially achieved target there of the number of SLP conducted. We planned to 212. There we could not achieve 8. This was due to the lockdown. Next, there is a one at the bottom there of number of compliance inspections conducted. We planned 150 and we did 134. 16 balance could not be done because of the lockdown. At the center, there is a number of environmental inspections that were supposed to be conducted. The number was 1,275, and then we did 968, underachieved by 307, is due to lockdown. But there are catch-up plans by the relevant managers to improve performance in this regard. Next slide. There is an audit that was supposed to be conducted to check compliance with the BEE Act. The intention was to have these audits 100% performed, but there were some delays in terms of the internal processes. But what has been done now, we have gone through the bid evaluation. COVID-19 also contributed here because our colleagues working in the various sections of the department have a staggered what you call system of coming to work. But now that things have improved, I think we'll get there. Next slide. There is a partially there at the bottom, Chair, that speaks to the number of mining economics inspections conducted. We planned to do 500, as you can see there. We did 401. We underachieved 99. Same reason, it was during those difficult times of the COVID. Next slide. We are on program 3. We're gonna go to program 3. Oh, okay. On this one, there is the one that talks to the greenhouse gas emissions, very important. We were supposed to do the report, but in the main to produce the framework. This was not done because the service provider was appointed slightly late, but the department has now appointed the service provider through the World Bank so as to accelerate the production of this particular output, which is the framework. Next slide. Okay, on this one, there is a target of a number of publications and economic reports to be produced. We planned to do 25. It was partially achieved. And then here, Chair, is that when you produce this report, you need a lot of information. In other words, that have got facts in what you're going to publish. So there is a dependency from SARS. At the time, SARS had some problems with their system, but the department has found another method or approach, a technique to obtain the information. We we will be improving on this one. Next slide. Next one. We've got a target of dealing with the radio waste management fund bill. This was partially achieved simply because there was recommendations from the cluster to effect into the bill, which the department is working on. So the bill will be is actually earmarked to be tabled in cabinet during Q2 this year. Next slide. There was also legislation to improve the electricity policy and regulatory framework. No, I'm sorry, it's about the pricing policy to be reviewed. This one was partially achieved. The reason, after the analysis was done, it was found that actually there was nothing relevant that would require that this bill should be looked at. So as where we are, the bill is found to be having everything in order. So it's not necessary that the bill should be taken to cabinet. Next slide. Gas infrastructure master plan. We plan to have this plan finalized. This was not done, it was partially, but then the reason for that was that we deferred this target to be done in the later stage, because it says it must be in the 2022 in the 2022-23 APP, so it will be in the next APP. As far as the ADAM, that is the framework, this was not achieved simply because there was a delay on the agreement from the DPSA, but we are engaging with the DPSA so that we could have consensus in terms of the content and the context of the ADAM framework. Next slide. I've done this one, go pass it. There was a number of publications and economic reports. This time, this one has been done, pass it. The Nuclear Regulator Amendment Bill, you can pass. The electricity pricing reviewed, done, pass. The gas infrastructure master plan, pass. Mine health and safety. We planned to have a reduction in occupational fatalities. This one was not achieved simply because there were more multiple fatalities reported by months during this year. And then this was as a result of the fall of ground, as well as the general equipment that would have caused the accidents during that period. But a catch-up plan, as well as an improvement response action plan, has been put by the relevant branch together with the mining companies to improve the situation. Next slide. With regard to the improvement in mine health and safety parameters, this was partially achieved. We plan to do 8,800, we did 770. This was as a result of the lockdown. Next slide. Programs and projects. With regard to the power purchase agreement signed, this could not be done simply because there was a need to extend the bid submission date period because of the timeline that they were subjected to between December and January, which was slow. And then on the issue that relates to the number of energy savings, this one was achieved, you can pass. Energy consumption baselines, we planned 15, we did 14. One was not done because of the non-compliance by some of the municipalities against the DORA, but the department is working to correct the situation. With regard to the National Energy Efficiency Strategy, it was not achieved. This was due to the time that has lapsed since the development of the revised strategy, but there was a need that there must be internal consultation, internal and external consultations. Next slide. On the renewable energy sector master plan, not achieved. The process of constituting the project team took longer due to the need for alignment with other stakeholders. Next, you can pass this one. Next slide. Next one again. Solar water. We were supposed to install 50 and we did not achieve this. The main reasons for delays was because of the need to procure additional materials that are not included as part of the manufactured solar water heaters. And then the other one is the energy sector master plan, not achieved, but currently a draft renewable energy master plan is being worked, and the process of constituting the project team took longer than we expected due to the need for alignment with key stakeholders. Next slide. With regard to the installation of solar home solar home systems, the reason for the delays was because of the materials as well, and additional material was required because the types of the houses built would not match or take the load of the material. So therefore, this is the work that is required in terms of the standard. Next slide. This one I've done, energy master plan, you can pass. Number 6 is nuclear. There is a new multi-purpose reactor that should be procured by 2024. It was partially achieved. The submission to the minister sharing the data collection report on the feasibility study has been finalized, and that we are hopeful that it will find traction in this financial year. Next slide. Thank you, Chairperson, honorable members, DM, DG. Now this will be the CFO who will be presenting the financials. Thank you.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, DM, DG, and colleagues, I'll present the financial performance as at 31 March 2021. In the slide that's on the screen at the moment, the department had a budget of 7.5 billion. They spent 7.1 billion, which equates to 95% of the budget. 382 million was not spent. The 2020-21 financial year was the first year of operations for DMRE, hence there are no comparative figures for 19-20 financial year. In the 2021 year, the department spent 95%. Chairperson, the biggest contributor was the national lockdown and working offsite, which contributed to the lower spend than anticipated. All programs that experience underspending for the year under review, the unspent funds were surrendered to National Treasury subsequent to year end. We did request a rollover of 265 million. Treasury approved 32.7 million for non-grid and 28 million for solar water heating installation of the units. Next slide, please. Chair, it's a very same 382 million that is not spent. I'm just trying to explain or show that contributing to this underspend, compensation of employees was 57.3 million. Yeah, Chairperson, it was mainly due to the filling of vacancies. We've experienced a number of delays here. In the main, it was due to the National Organization of Government, that was the NMOC process, which concluded much later than was planned, and our recruitment processes are a bit longer in government, so we did contribute to this underspending. But efforts have been made to address this matter in the next financial year. Goods and services, you can see an overspend of 142 million. Chairperson, it's got to be read together with the next line, that's transfers and subsidies. The spending, the actual expenditure sits under goods and services, but the budget sits under transfers. And the reason for this, Chairperson, the overspending is due to the costs which were to be transferred from transfers and subsidies to goods and services. It was a classification in compliance with the National Treasury Circular. This is in relation to projects that were implemented by entities on behalf of the department. So hence that circular had to be adhered to. We have CGS, Mhsc, that does projects on behalf of DMRE, and their expenditure actually is goods and services in our department. In the past, we had it under transfers. That's a reason for the disjuncture between those two amounts. Transfer payments, yes, we did have a huge underspending. In the main, it was non-grid INEP program, and we did request a rollover, as I mentioned, but Treasury did not approve the entire rollover. Funding was a bit of a challenge at Treasury at year end, and there were competing priorities, and the department, our engagements with Treasury, they asked us to try and cover some of those costs in our current budget. Payment for capital assets, we had a slight overspend there. Next slide, please. Chair, these are the audit outcomes, which was also presented by the AG. In the previous financial year, I've stated the ex-DOE and ex-DMR. Both were also yellow. They were unqualified with findings. In DMRE, which is our first year of operations, we've maintained that outcome as well. But the merger of DOE and DMR did have some unintended repercussions. And as much as the audit was planned, a lot of work has gone into the planning to ensure that this process was undertaken with the minimum amount of disruptions, given the pandemic as well. We had other issues, and some of them were the change management that didn't take place as it should have. We had different methodologies of working between the both departments. There were skill deficits identified in some key areas. And the NMOC process also, we had placements of staff in incorrect areas of expertise, so which led to some of the outcomes in this audit. But Chair, I want to say we've had many engagements with the AG and with the technical team at Treasury and the technical team at AG. They've also engaged them to ensure that some of these matters, we try and have a more consistent methodology going forward. And we hope to have a better outcome going forward, Chair. Next slide, please. Just as a summary, Chairperson and members, it's a summary of the audit findings, which was covered at length by the AG, but I will highlight a few of them. The contingent liability and provision, these were material misstatements in the financial statements. The department had spent a lot of time with line function to address the issues raised by AG in the prior year. This relates to the rehabilitation of the asbestos mines. This is the contingent liability and the provisions that we normally raise in the financial statements. The AG raised many findings in the prior year. So we've spent a lot of time engaging the AG and line function to ensure that these findings were closed from the prior year, that was from ex-DMR side. And Chair, we successfully closed those findings at the time we had issued the financial statements to the AG for audit. However, when the AG started their audit, they found that some of the methodology which has been accepted in the prior years in this financial year was not correct. We spent a lot of time with Treasury and their AG technical team to iron out these differences. We did push back in many instances when we found that the AG was not consistent in their audit approach. And it's the very same audit team that has been auditing the departments for the last 5 years. And they have been auditing these figures, but this year they have made a material adjustment. The next item is contingent assets, which was a material adjustment. Yet, Chairperson, it was under the solar water heater project. We have a litigation currently underway, and the AG felt we raised it as a contingent asset because we feel we have paid the manufacturer for these units, and we are entitled to receive the full unit for what we have paid for. And the manufacturer had theft at their premises, and some of the components were missing. And we needed to determine the value of those missing components. And at the time of the audit, that process was incomplete. Immovable assets, there was an amount of 53 million. These were for improvements done to the Trevena campus, it's one of our head offices. We found that we couldn't find supporting documents, but we did ask the AG, since they've been auditing for the last few years, could they assist us in this area? We did get some help from the AG. We managed to get some information from the department itself. But going forward, the end user felt all the is not improvements, but they were of a view that it should have been maintenance. The last one is the inadequate impairment of the accrued revenue. This methodology has been used in the past by the ex-DMR for the mining rights, which was duly approved by the accounting officer and applied for the last few years. But in this financial year, the AG felt the methodology was incorrect. So we found an inconsistency here again, Chair. But given the merger, Chairperson, we've tried to use this opportunity going forward to correct and address some of the issues the AG have raised. But in this one in particular, we did challenge the finding. And we had extensive discussions with AG and Treasury as well. But going forward, we'll try to rectify some of them. The AG also raised a matter on interest, and the interest part, Chairperson, was on petroleum license fees. We need the regulations to be changed in that area because the license fees and the renewal fees are a fairly low amount for petroleum licenses. To charge interest on a daily basis is minute amounts, very immaterial amounts, and the administrative work behind it far outweighs the benefit to the department. And we have written to National Treasury in the past, and we are going to start that process again to ensure we get somewhere with Treasury and find some consensus on the matter. If I can move to the next slide, please. Chairperson, on the next slide is the payment of creditors. We try to pay the creditors within 30 days. We have been paying them on the average of 8 days. But if you look at the next line of 90 million, 70% of that amount is over 30 days. And the reason for that, Chairperson, is that there are codependencies. And it's mainly due to the verification processes that the department has to undertake before payments are executed. And an improvement plan has been developed and is being rolled out to improve our performance in this area. Next slide, please. Chair, it's a debtor collection period, which is also raised by the AG. And in the main, this relates to the mining rights revenue collection and petroleum licensing collection. Chair, with the amount of outstanding debt in this area, the capacity constraints in the department needs to be addressed, and we are in consultation with corporate services in this regard. We are hoping, and I have also developed an improvement plan for the revenue collection, and we would see a difference in the next financial year. And I think I've reached the end of my presentation. With that, I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. This takes us to the end of the presentation. We are then handing over the meeting to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, DM and the DG. Can you allow me, honorable members, to quickly put in, I'm sure you see there, the Man Health and Safety Council. Take your 15 minutes, please.
No, Chairperson.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe before we actually allow the entities to present, I just want to share with the portfolio committee these new appointments. Is it fine? Should I proceed?
Now, can we continue? We'll come back to the entities. We prefer the Man Health and Safety Council. Even if there's something new, can you please, DM, introduce that person when we go to the entities? But we prefer Man Health and Safety Council to be part of the programs of the department for one reason. At times, there are overlapping things that they do with your Man Health and Safety, Man Health and Safety Division.
Okay, it's fine. Thank you, Chair.
We will allow you when we go to the entities. The time now, it means 10 past 12. You can come back to me. Man Health and Safety Council.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Also, just greetings to the Chairperson, honorable members, the Deputy Minister, the DG, and the colleagues. If the presentation can be please showed. Okay, can we go to Ms. Montantla, are you able to show the presentation?
Apologies, Ms. MCs and members. I'm trying to reload the presentation. I just encountered some technical hiccups. I'm loading it again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Montantla. I think just go to the next slide, please. The presentation outline, Honorable Chairperson and members, is as indicated on the slide. We'll do an introduction and the performance overview. As Honorable Chairperson indicated, there's some work that we overlap with the branch, Man Health and Safety, so we'll touch on some of the work, and also the research projects, the seed-funded projects, health and safety of women in mining, and the work that we do in terms of COVID-19, financial performance, and the AG audit outcome and action plan on what we've been doing as the council. And that will be touched also by the CEO, the acting CEO, Mr. Dlamini. Can you just go to the next slide, please? Honorable Chairperson, quickly, the reporting period marks the 25th years since the Mine Health and Safety Act was introduced, and subsequently the Mine Health and Safety Council was also established. Prior to the Act, the South African mining sector had the 6th highest fatality rate in the world. The Mine Health and Safety Act promotes the spirit of tripartism and cooperation amongst all stakeholders on the mine health and safety of mine workers and people affected by mining. So we work together with business, organized labor, and the state to improve health and safety. We believe that it is through this collaboration that the lowest injuries diseases were also reported during 2020, and the lowest fatalities were recorded in 2019. As the AG has indicated, we received an unqualified audit for the reporting period, but all efforts are put in place to further enhance governance, because we've been dealing with governance issues, as the AG indicated, that were anchored in the previous years as well. So we have done forensic investigations, and we are taking actions. Yes, indeed, as the AG has indicated, because of the quantum of some of the issues that came out, we constantly are doing investigations, and we'd like to assure the honorable members that we will continue to take action as we are highlighting. Last on that bullet point, Honorable Chairperson, we are also filling key positions at the entity to make sure that we improve on the stability. The next slide, please. I've also, I think it's for us, we felt that it's very important that we take a mirror view to say where we came from before the Act, where are we now, and what we should do to improve on safety moving forward. As the 3 stakeholders, we've agreed that we must achieve the goal of zero harm, and we are working on it. Before the Mine Health and Safety Act came into being, there were 808 fatalities reported by all mines, mainly by the gold sector and the coal sector at that time. But you can see on the slide that in 2019, we had lowest fatalities in the gold and also the coal sector, and also the mines, all of the mines. Can you just go to the next slide, please? Similarly, with injuries, previously the mines used to, if you look at the lowest row, the mines used to report more than 15,000 injuries, but in 2020 you can see with there was just above 1,700 injuries reported by the sector. The next slide. This trend basically shows where we come from, as I indicated, and where are we now in terms of fatalities. 2020, there's a bit of regression, as highlighted by Mr. Mulawuzi, and we're working together with the sector to improve. But we can clearly see that over the years, there's been a significant reduction in fatalities. However, we must indicate to the honorable members that we are also still greatly concerned that fatalities are taking place in the sector. Next slide, please. And also one of the things that we monitor is the number of disasters reported by the sector over the period. We look where we come from. What is encouraging is that the last 2 years we have not had a disaster, which is also encouraging, but we still have accidents that has multiple accidents, so fatalities. So we are also looking at it. The next slide. And we also do a comparison. I've indicated that at one stage we ranked the 6th in terms of the highest fatality contributors. We are also comparing ourselves with best performing countries like the Australians, the Canadians, and the United States. You can clearly see South Africa indicated in green, dotted green. We have been coming down. However, we are not there as yet, but I think it's encouraging that at least we are almost in certain areas comparing favorably with the best performing countries. The next slide, please. Similar with injuries, we had the lowest reported last year, as indicated. Move to the next one. We also look at the occupational diseases trends for all the subsectors, gold, platinum, coal, and other mines. You can clearly see that the numbers have also been coming down. With 2020, having the lowest reported. The next slide, please. The main contributors as well, mainly is TB, but we can clearly see that the numbers have been also coming down. You can go to the next one, please. We also, Honorable Chairperson and members, we also collect information on HIV and TB. We've agreed as a sector, we must also monitor that. If you look at the tested HIV positive, currently about 5.1% of the employees are positive, and we have programs that we are working through the council to improve on that as well. It also shows the TB numbers at the bottom as well. The next slide, please. Honorable Chairperson and members, we also monitor the numbers on a daily basis on COVID-19. During when we've done this report, I think it was the beginning of October, the numbers were as indicated on the screen. The tests were just above 254,000. The cases at that time was more than 51,000, and the recovery rate was 98% at that time. And the active cases were about 408, and the deaths about 698, and the vaccinated were just above 209,000. I must indicate that we've been going around with the minister to the mines, encouraging the vaccination rollout. Currently, the sector has vaccinated about 60%, and we are working together with the sector to vaccinate beyond 80%. So it has been challenges, but we are coming with programs that the council to also get that. The next slide. I'll now hand over to Mr. Dlamini to continue with the rest of the presentation. Mr. Dlamini.
Thank you, Chairperson, honorable members, DM, DG, and all protocol observed. Mhsc, in terms of the performance overview, achieved 80% of its strategic initiative, and also achieved 94% in the collection of the levies, which was above the target. Next slide. The legislative advice and guidelines that were developed to deal with prevention of flammable gas and coal dust explosion in the collieries, and also the implementation of cultural transformation for framework, and also the HIV/AIDS Convention. Next slide. Another legislative advice guideline that were developed to deal with the prevention of flammable gas explosions in the mines, and also the guided notes on the management and control of HIV. The next slide. The falls of ground, it's a major contributor to the fatalities in the mining sector. As a result, the Mhsc has embarked on a rock mass assessment tool to assist with those ground incidents. And also a prototype camera has also been developed to assist with the rock mass conditions and the uses of thermal images and acoustic capabilities. The next slide. Some of the research projects that the Mhsc has embarked on with an aim of assisting with the transportation incident, so that the actual outcome at the end is to ensure that the establishment of the testing facility for vehicles that are used in the mining operations, and also achieved the through evaluation of collision avoidance technologies and analysis of different scenarios like your warnings, retarding, and stopping technologies based on the combination of the simulation test. And also Mhsc has also revised the legislation to allow collision avoidance systems implementation. Next slide. Also on the Mhsc seed funding initiative, medical microscope was also upgraded, and also the application relevant to pathologists, occupational medicine, and practitioners, and occupational hygienists and research were also developed. The next slide. Mhsc has also prioritized the issues of women in the mining space. A gender-based violence event was held in Mpumalanga last year in October, And the focus was on the safety and security of the women in the mining sector, and also to create awareness on the guidelines for PPE for women in the mining. And also Mhsc continues to conduct research and develop legislation to make the mining environment more conducive for women. Next slide. Mhsc, in response to COVID-19 in the South African mining industry, we have reviewed our APP for 2020-21 and readjusted our budget to take into account the issues of COVID. And as a result, the guiding principles on prevention of management of COVID-19 was developed. Return to work directive through the DMR was also developed. The guidelines for the compilation of Mandatory Code of Practice for prevention and mitigation of management of COVID-19 outbreak. The next slide. The next slide looks at the financial overview for Mhsc. Basically, what it's telling us is that there is sources of revenue streams, which one of them is the levies, and the second one is the state funding and the interest on the positive bank balances and the other. And also the council has approved a revenue generation strategy to look at other revenue streams, like your IP commercialization, to mention the few. Next slide. Financial performance. Mhsc had 90.5 budget, and also the expenditure was 102.1 million, and there was about 11.5 million loss, but it's worth noting that there's been a reduction from the 20 million to 11.5 because the entity has implemented cost-cutting measures and looking at project prioritization. The next slide. The Mhsc achieved an unqualified audit opinion with matters on the findings, on procurement-related findings, and contract management and irregular expenditure and accounting-related findings. On irregular expenditure, it's also worth noting that there's been a reduction on the irregular expenditure from the prior years to this current year to like 5 million. And the entity has also developed an action plan on how to deal with these AG's findings. One of them is the turnaround strategy at SCM and training the SCM official and all colleagues that are using the procurement, and also additional appointment on the bid committee members, and also training the bid committee members to ensure that we don't have the repeat findings going forward. And also on the contract management, we've implemented approved contract management framework and strategy. And also in the preventing of irregular expenditure, we have conducted some training for all employees that are involved in procurement, and also on the training on the GRAP, on the misstatement of the financial statements. We have also appointed the finance manager, and we also trained the officials on the GRAP standard. And we're continuously implementing the consequence management by conducting the investigation and implementing the recommendation thereof. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, Deputy Minister, and the DG. Thank you.
DM?
Yes, Chairperson, we're done. Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable DM. Honorable members, we know what to do. Can we take all the issues that are raised in the department except the program on mine health and safety? I request we deal with that when we deal with the Man Health and Safety Council. But the rest of the presentation on the department, can I give members the opportunity to deal with, to raise their questions or comments? I'm trying to see, there's a hand of Honorable Lorema, there's a hand of Honorable Milam. Is there any other hand? There's a hand of Honorable Kula. There's a hand of Honorable Malinga. Any other hand? Okay. Can I start with the hand? Sorry, Honorable Lorema, and then I will come for Honorable Malinga, and then Honorable Milam, and then Honorable Kula. In that line.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll start with slide 6. When do you expect the Upstream Petroleum Development Bill to come before this committee? Because it looks like it's only going to do so next year. Secondly, what is the status of the artisanal and small scale policy? Is that going to form part of legislation, or is that going to be pushed through as part of regulation? Third question relates to slide 7 and slide 28. Please define a black industrialist. How do you assess when one has been created? And then what's the relationship between procurement from black industrialist and lowest cost procurement? Question 4, you report on the number of rights and permits granted to HDSA controlled entities. I don't see a record of the number of rights and permits, the total number of rights and permits granted. Have I missed it? What is the total? If you haven't reported it, why only HDSA controlled entities? On to slide 33 then, you report on the number of jobs created through the issuing of rights and permits. I'd like to know how many of those jobs were created by the rights and permits issued to HDSA controlled entities as against those not controlled by HDSA entities. And then slide 38, are all of those reports and publications that you have published available on the department's website? And if they aren't, can we get a list of them, please? Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Honorable Malin.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings again to everybody on the platform. Let me welcome the presentation by the department chair. I will want to zoom straight to the financial report by the CFO. Chairperson, she started by mentioning the audit outcome of 2021 ex-DOE and DMR, unqualified with the unintended repercussions of the merger due to disruptions, where she highlighted that there were people who were in positions that they did not qualify or have necessary skills for. What is the department's mitigation strategy to deal or to field people in the portfolios that they qualify for? Chairperson, I'm also concerned with the irregular expenditure of, I think it's 7 million due to non-compliance of SCM legislation. I find this very disturbing, Chair, because you have an internal audit component in the department. Is this happening because people, they don't understand the legislation, or what is really the cause, Chair? Because you can't be having such a finding in terms of supply chain management. What is the consequence in terms of people breaking the SCM legislation? Chairperson, lastly, Lendo Yama solar water heater geysers. Are we ever going to get this correct, Chair? Because now the CFO said there were things that were missing, which we all know about, and it amounted, the irregular expenditure amounts to, I think it's a 20 million. Will this project ever be completed? And what does it need for it to be completed, so that we don't find ourselves in the same position again next year talking about the solar water geysers? Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable Milam.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon. I think, yeah, good afternoon to everybody. Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity. There are a couple of questions that I have. I just want to start with the financial question first. During the reporting segment on slide 23, it was reported that the objective of the department was achieved in that there was no irregular, no unauthorized, and no fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And yet on slide 69, we see that there is 7.5 million rand of irregular expenditure, 4 million of unauthorized, and 21 million rand of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. In other words, we're getting a report that says we've achieved our targets, and yet we're also getting in the same report proof that they have not achieved their targets. And I'd really like some clarity on that. Then I'm not sure the slide number, but there was a target around the gas infrastructure master plan and how this had been pushed to the 2021-2022 financial year, but no reasons were given as to why that was. So I'd really like to know why it was not concluded and why it has been pushed out by a year. There were several documents that were referred to during the presentation as having been completed, and I believe that this committee would do well to interrogate those documents quite extensively. So, Chairperson, I'm going to direct this to you. Could we have a session at which the department unpacks the following documents? 1, the nuclear roadmap. 2, the electricity pricing policy, and in particular, why it was deemed acceptable, the current policy was deemed acceptable. I'd really like to dig into the report there, given the increasing electricity prices. And 3, and most importantly, given the recent announcements out of COP26, is the Just Transition report. So could we get the department to come and give us a presentation at which they unpack those documents so that we can understand fully what they entail and what they suggest? Then, Chairperson, I'd like to reiterate what Honorable Malinga said about the solar water heater program. First of all, can the DG tell us what consequences there have been for the failure to conclude the solar water heater program and the costs incurred on that? Secondly, Chair, we were assured on the 2 or 3 occasions that this has been before this committee and is more particularly on our oversight earlier this year, that it would be completed this year, and yet only 3,000 have been installed. So what's the holdup? I mean, it can't just be components missing from some geysers. Frankly, Chairperson, given the cost that has been incurred on this program, I believe it is now necessary that we write off this program in its entirety and that we move on. We waste so much time talking about the National Solar Water Heater Program and spending so much money on it, and there seems to be absolutely no consequences. I think it's time that we write it off as a bad project and move on to the next thing. Chair, that's it for me for now. Thank you.
Honorable Kula.
No, thanks for the opportunity, Chair. Greetings to you, Chairperson. Greetings to the Deputy Minister. Greetings to colleagues in the Portfolio Committee and the DG and the delegation from the department. My first question, Chair, is around Program 2, where the presentation says many of the planned targets were not achieved. And most of the time in the presentation, a reference is made that we did not achieve this target because of COVID-19. We did not achieve that target because of COVID-19. We did not achieve that target because of COVID-19. So I want to understand that as far as Program 2 is concerned, did the department not factor in COVID-19 implications on their planning? Because all of us have known that we are living under these conditions, and our planning must be able to center around that. So for me, Chair, it's not a reason enough for us to be told that we did not achieve this aspect and that aspect on the basis of COVID-19 when we knew for a fact that COVID has been there, because it's a failure of planning, because we're supposed to plan with the knowledge that COVID exists so that we're able to implement while it's there. Two, Chair, the department has got 100% new target in terms of their participation in the district in the district planning, in district forum. And they are saying that their past participation has been 0. And one of the reasons that they've taken out as a cause for that is that they've got a problem, so excuse me, they've got a problem of attending physical meetings. So I want to know that with their new target of 100%, what if this forum still sits in a physical meeting? Will the department still have a problem with attending such meetings? So it says if the problem that they are currently having still persists, then it will say that they will not participate in those forums, Chairperson. I'm glad that Honorable Malinga and Honorable Mailam raised the issue around the solar water heaters program. And I must say, Chairperson, that while I don't agree with the concluding remarks of Honorable Mailam that we need to write off the program and characterize it as a bad program, that is not true. The program has got good intentions. The fault lies with the department, that they ought to see that the program is better managed, that all the targets that they set for themselves around the program are met. Because it's mind-boggling, Chairperson, that in each and every meeting of this portfolio committee, every time when there are reports around this program, there seems to be lack of progress, lack of implementation. And you must say, Chairperson, to the department once and for all, that we are tired of them making this and that excuse around implementation of this program. Because in this meeting, you'll hear this excuse, in the next meeting, you'll hear another excuse. That is totally and completely unacceptable. We want them to really give this program the due diligence and consideration that this need to be given. We need to ensure that this program is driven to its logical conclusion. All the delays around this program needs to be attended once and for all. I think that's our message. Going into the financials, Chair, I see that we've spent 95% of our budget. We've got a budget of we've got an underspend of 5%. We also have an irregular expenditure of 7.4 million. We've got a fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 20.6 million. And I want the CFO to say to this portfolio committee that how do they then intend to ensure that we avoid underspending on our budget? Number one, what are the practical programs do they have, plans do they have in place to ensure that we deal with the underspend? What are the practical programs that they have and plans to deal with the irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful expenses that are there in the department? Lastly, Chairperson, you know, every time when the department comes and make a presentation in this portfolio committee, and the reference is made to a Black Industrialist program, not that I'm answering on behalf of the department, Honorable Lorima will always come and stand up and ask one question over and over again, that what is a Black industrialist? So I think it's incumbent upon the department that maybe they need to send a formal reply in a letter detailing what entails, what are the aspects of a Black industrialist, not only to Honorable Lorima, but to all members of this portfolio, so that in future, when he asks this very same question, we are then able to refer him back to his emails. It appears to me as if he has got a problem with the Black Industrialist program. And we are going to say in this portfolio committee that we fully support that Black Industrialization program. And there's nothing that Honorable Lorima says or anybody who says who's going to stop that program. We support it, and it must continue to be supported and implemented to the latter. It's not only white people who must be industrialists in this country. Black people too must benefit from the opportunities of this democracy. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, honorable members. With your issues, I intend not to dilute, but let me say this. I note what you raised, Honorable Milam. Can we, because we are still going to deal with the content of the report, what is it, submit the draft report for the committee. Can you keep those issues properly so that we deal with them when we deal with the report itself as part of both the observations and recommendations, including the point with regards the issue of the issue that relates to the solar water heaters. I think that is our duty as a committee to deal with that issue. Can I also say, honorable members, I don't want us to be, I've been saying this thing on many occasions, please, can we raise issues that must be answered by the department or any person who comes and present? Leave areas of agreement or disagreement for us when we deal with the matter. The point that you are raising, Honorable Kola, I agree with you, but it will be much more located when again we deal with the report. Safe to say, members must remember, we had asked the department to come and present, including the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. It was clear that there is a complete misunderstanding or distortion of what is defined as a Black industrialist with regards to how different it is from Black economic empowerment and how is it different from a Black entrepreneur. And even because we said, in order to hold the department accountable on whether what is giving us, at that point, the department had made a presentation of building Black industrialists through procurement. And that is when the issue is said, rather than to leave it to the department, let's invite the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. And I remember even the DM did make a concession that this is not something according to what we're dealing with that is different. But can we leave those things that require us to agree or disagree, those things that require us to make recommendations, including what do we think the committee will need? I note the point, again, I'm not saying, Honorable Lorema, the department should not respond to you now, but to the best of my appeal will be that some of those issues are things that we must also see whether we agree with them or not, but they will have to respond to the issues that you are raising. But I'm very skeptical of a situation where I make a point as a member of the committee, then an assumption gets drawn that that is what the committee is asking for. So even if the department answers that matter, I will also say, can those issues be raised and say, we think that as a committee, we must also be furnished with this particular information in order to assist the committee to perform its oversight work in a proper and a thorough manner. So I'm just saying we'll get an opportunity when we deal with the report. I'm not saying members are raising wrong things. I'm just saying those issues might be relevant because now they will be between us as a committee. Finally, we may come out of the committee and say, in the recommendation, we request this particular information. We request the department to come and make these specific presentations and all these other issues at this stage. But can I then give the department to respond, and then we'll take a break probably at 10 to or 5 to 1. DM?
Oh, thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee. We are noting all your questions for clarity based on the presentation that we have tabled before the committee. And we are actually taking those questions very serious, and some of the criticism that you are getting from this portfolio committee. But Chair, I'm going to respond to one or two issues, then I'll then hand over to the DG and the team to take some of the questions that have been raised by the members of the portfolio committee. Chair, the first one is the one that I'm going to respond to, is the question around gas amendment bill that has been raised by Honorable Lorima, where he was asking when are we then going to take this bill or finalize this bill and take it to Pali. What, due to some of the delays and some of the technical processes that we need to follow internally, Chair, then this is going to be taken to Pali in the next financial year. In relation to the question that has been raised by Honorable Mylem, in relation to gas infrastructure master plan, Chair, I think when we put our reasons for not meeting the target, we were too narrow in terms of trying to unpack the reasons. Because what we have said is that we did not have all the required resources to produce the master plan. Basically, what we're trying to then imply is that we did not have all the technical modeling tools. Two, we did not have specialists in modeling and economic analysis. So now the department is entering into agreement with CSIR that is going to assist us in this regard. So hopefully we are going to then move with speed in trying to improve and meet this target in this financial year, Chairperson. In relation to the one that Honorable Kula and Honorable Malinga spoke on in relation to our financial performance as the department as far as SEM management is concerned. Chair, I think when you gave me an opportunity to actually make an overview before the portfolio committee, I did indicate that we are noting all these concerns, the limitations and the gaps as far as our performance, our financial performance is concerned as the department. And what we have done is to actually develop an action plan based on the outcomes and findings of the AG. And we are going to ensure that in quarterly basis, we monitor and evaluate those the implementation of those action plans. And we've actually developed the mitigation strategies that we believe that they are effective and efficiently that we are going to employ in turning around the tides. Thank you so much, Chair. I'm going to hand over to the DG and the team then to proceed with other questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, DM. I will invite the DG Makubela to start. He will be followed by the Chief Financial Officer. And we also have some officials as well from the the policy division that will come in to respond to some of the questions. I will deal with the solar heater program at the end and some other questions relating to the artisanal mining. Over to you, DDG Makubela, the CFO. We'll start with you, DDG Makubela.
Thank you very much, DG. Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, honorable members, honorable DM, DG and colleagues. Let me first start with the question raised by Honorable Lorima on the industrialist program. I think our approach is one that is informed by what was published by the DTIC. So the way we define as the DMRE a Black industrialist is individuals, Black individuals in particular, that are involved in the creation of industrial enterprises that involve themselves in the manufacturing of goods as well as in the provision of original services. Now, we have a number of these companies. Perhaps I think what we need to do is to, at the right time, to provide at least some examples of them. There is, for example, a company that manufactures conveyor belts for the mining companies. It's a Black-owned company. Some are involved in engineering. Some are involved in the manufacturing of pumps, and they are being used by the mining companies in their operations. So in our view, those are some of the successes that we've had, because we do not dictate, for example, to the mining companies, but we do say to them, there are companies, you need to look at them, you need to give them opportunities, and they must go through the processes of procurement that is followed by the different mining companies. And they do make it, and they are able to compete with other companies. And, you know, those are successes that we report when we submit our reports. The two other questions, I would request that we provide that information separately, because we did not have a target that talks to the total number of applications that have been adjudicated. But we have that figure, we can provide the figure. On the issue of differentiating in terms of jobs created between HDSAs and non-HDSAs, also, again, we believe that that does not really, from our side, it was not an area of focus, because in terms of advancing the HDSAs, we do not see how that differentiation perhaps could assist. But we can provide the figures as it were if they are required. The issue of underperformance, I think I would like, was raised by Honorable Ngula. Firstly, I think as the head of the branch, I do accept responsibility for the underperformance of the branch during the last financial year. I want to say, though, that we had one quarter last year which was written off, and that was the first quarter of the financial year, where we could not go out to the field at all. We could not inspect, we could not go to the mining houses, because this was during the hard lockdown. And as much as we tried to catch up, it became an impossible task because of the various lockdowns that then followed and various restrictions. And I must say that this year, I can attest to the fact that there's a different level of performance, because now we can no longer, provide we don't have the hard lockdown, and as a result, we are performing quite well. The district planning forums, last year we were not invited to them. I think it was also because of the issue of the various restrictions on the public gatherings. However, this year already, we in at least one province, we do 3 per quarter, showing that now, there's a relaxation, and then we're able to attend all the ones where we are invited. The other issue is that perhaps in conclusion is to say that one of the issues that keeps coming up is that of the refinery, even though it was not asked. And we have indicated there that that target will fall away because the investor is no longer interested in building that refinery in Richards Bay. Thank you, DG. Thank you, DM. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, DG, Honorable Chairperson and members, DM. The response to Honorable Malinga in terms of the SEM non-compliance to the legislation. Chair, I want to point out that, yes, it is non-compliance to the SEM matters, but these are contracts that was awarded in the prior financial years. And because the contracts run over multiple years, we have to also identify and classify the expenditure that happens in the current year. So although it's coming from the past, it will have an impact in the current financial year because we're still paying for that contract. So that is why we will continually have the non-compliance until that contract concludes and terminated with the department. And in most instances, our contracts run over 3 years. And in these instances, it was for security contracts where the tax matters of the service provider was not compliant at the date of award. So, but because of it's coming from prior year, we cannot just ignore it in the current year. That's closely linked to Honorable Milam's question. We had a target that said we achieved it, and how come we have irregular and fruitless expenditure in the current year? We don't have any new contracts that we did not have non-compliance to SEM prescripts for. So all of these contracts for fruitless, irregular, and unauthorized emanate from the prior financial years from the legacy departments, and it came into the new department. But Chairperson and members, I can assure the committee that, as Dia mentioned, there is an implementation plan to correct all of these non-compliances going forward, and we are reporting regularly on that matter as well. Solar water heating, yes, the 20 million is for storage cost only. And Chair, as I don't want to sound as if I'm defending the amount, but in the prior years, the amount for storage has been substantially higher. The department has managed to relocate the units from the manufacturer's storage premises to our own storage facilities. And there are, I think, 2 service providers that still has to be done. Those units still have to be moved. Honorable Kula raised the 5% of underspending and what is the department doing to manage this process. The spending in the department is being closely monitored, and where the areas that we identify underspending, we try and move those budgets on a quarterly basis to areas that are in need. And all projects and spending against the procurement plans are being monitored and reported at EXCO and to Treasury. We also look at the improvement plans at our MANCO meetings, that is our middle management and EXCO, and in fact all management attend that meeting. So we do monitor the progress and the targets for all branches. So the money is moved timeously, but in this financial year we had the pandemic and the national lockdown, which contributed a substantial amount to the underspending. Thank you, Chair and DG.
Thank you very much, CFO. Thank you, Chair, PM, and honorable members. I will deal with a few outstanding questions. I think the first thing that I just want to clarify, Chair and honorable members, is that we have taken note of the issues that have been raised by honorable members. My plea will be that we respond holistically after we have received a report from the honorable members of the issues that you still want us to submit to the committee. That will be my first comment. The other issue, Chair, it is in relation with the bill that the Honorable Lorima raised, a question around. As you are aware, as members of parliament, that the Upstream Petroleum Resources Bill was tabled in parliament, and that is where the process is at the moment. I can also further report that on the gas amendment bill, it is at an advanced stage. Members are going to start with the public consultations over this weekend, this coming weekend. Now, on the artisanal small-scale mining policy, we closed on the 17th of June, where we are now dealing with the comments and also consulting. Remember that it was, the written comments that we invited people to submit, and it was closed on the 17th of June. And we are currently dealing with the consultations with relevant constituencies or stakeholders. The other issue that I thought maybe I should also overemphasize, the CFO has covered this point. The honorable member has reported he spoke about the 3,000 units that have been installed. The updated report, if I can zoom directly into this matter, is that we have 12,000 that is in phase 1 on the solar heater units that we have been able to install. We are going to start with the second phase. Now, there are lessons that we have learned from the first phase without getting into the history of how the project started. I think we have explained to the honorable members, and even the minister himself did explain on how this program started, and also, the way we feel about it. I mean, we would not want to repeat that or to emphasize that, but it suffices to say that DDG Mbele, working together with the relevant entity, which that is a Central Energy Fund, we are making sure that the second phase, we should be able to deal with all these challenges that we encountered in the first phase, which also contributed quite immensely, apart from the failure on the conceptual stage in which it was planned. Yes, indeed, it is 12,000 to date. I thought that I should just highlight this point. Other issues that I think those were just comments from the honorable members. I would not get into those comments. I think, Chair, most of the questions have been addressed, and the CFO has responded to the issues that relate to finances. I'll pause there. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, honorable members and the department. Time is of essence. Is there any matter that members wants to raise with regards to the mine health and safety, both the program and the Mine Health and Safety Council?
Chair?
Yes, Honorable Milam.
Sorry, Chair, just before we do that, I just want to raise a concern, and that is with regard to what was said about the irregular, fruitless, and wasteful and unauthorized expenditure. The department is basically saying that they incurred no irregular, unauthorized, and fruitless and wasteful expenditure this year, that they achieved their target. But they don't know that because the audit report has not yet been done for the current financial year. So they're basing that on the fact that they, by their own kind of internal record keeping, they feel that they have achieved their goal. So I think that we need to make sure that when we report against a success against targets, that we are reporting accurately. Otherwise, they are going to get hammered further down the line. So I really think that target on page 23 should be amended to either not achieved or partially achieved, because I do not believe that they have actually achieved that target in the current financial year. Thank you, Chair.
No, Honorable Mylan, I don't want us to correct what the department is prepared to correct. Keep that when we deal with the observations and the recommendations. I noted that. Can I allow that we deal with it? Because in my view, it is not what is contained even in the AG's report. So I will allow it, just remind us again when we deal with the, I don't want them to use this platform and correct what, in my view, I also feel that to talk about the current, for an example, to talk about the current financial year, I would say you are offside. We should be talking about the previous financial year. So I'm not suppressing you. I'm just saying I take the point. Can we deal, especially as an observation, that the department is making this, but as far as we see it, it may not necessarily be an accurate information that they are giving. I see that there is another hand. Yeah, Honorable Madam. I want us to close now.
I'm fine, Chair. Sorry, apologies.
Yes. Let's just take it, please record it. Let's take it when we deal with the report ourselves, because they are not prepared to change what they are saying. Okay, is there any take, honorable members, when it comes to the Mine Health and Safety Council and the program on mine health and safety? Okay, in the absence of any questions, all what I can say, I want to reserve my comments even on that one, and raise my areas of concerns on the achievement and the especially targets achieved. I note the fact that there have been no fatalities, but the biggest problem that will always remain on that program is the fact that it is very difficult to measure when you may not have the required capacity to attend, especially on risk mitigating environment. But in the absence of that, can I give members a break? For how long, Ari? What was the, I like to go with the program. We are not supposed to reconvene at 1:30.
That is correct, Chair.
Honorable members, take a break, stretch your legs. If we're still in Parliament, take a break, stretch your legs, grab something, and then reconnect at least at 1:25. So the meeting stands adjourned. DM, if you're still around, or anyone who will be mandated by you, when we come back, we are dealing with the entities. It will be then your point that we're raising around the introduction of new appointments. You will have that opportunity, and then you will then lead us straight to the same entities of the department. On that note, thank you very much. Let's meet again at 1:30.